afternoon from the 1011 Now streaming studio. I'm Danielle Shenk. This is Inside the Story with the Flatwater Free Press, a nonprofit news organization in Nebraska that emphasizes investigations and feature stories. Today, we're sitting down with Ryan Hoffman, who's been following the story about a nonprofit art studio in Lincoln that's being forced to close after operating here for over a decade. So thanks for being here, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Alrighty, so before we dive into the details here, can you quickly tell me a little bit about this nonprofit and what they do?
Yeah, so their name is Live Yes Studios, and they've been here for more than a decade. They really operated under the umbrella of a national organization based in Philadelphia, and they've been at it for, like I said, more than a decade, offering art classes to adults with developmental disabilities. And it's really been this story of finding their footing, getting stability, and then kind of hitting a speed bump, and then having to reorient themselves. And they've done that throughout most of their existence, and they finally seemed to settle down. They weathered the pandemic. They came out on the other side. They found a new building that they were getting comfortable in, and then they learned earlier this year their national parent organization was going to shut them down. They had basically had some financial mismanagement there. Just really poor management overall. That was detailed by reporting in the Philadelphia Inquirer. But essentially, they said, June 30th, you're done. And to the credit of the folks here in Lincoln, they said this is way too important. We cannot let this shut down. These 30 or so people who we serve over the course of a week at any given time, where are they going to go? Where are they going to get, the things that they get out of this art studio? There's just no other place in the state for them to get that, to get those connections, and to get that autonomy and everything. So they fought like heck. I mean, it was February 28th, and they basically had 4 months to figure it out. And to their credit, they managed to do so. And at the end of June, Live Yes moved out of their previous home, and they moved into a new home. And by all accounts, they're doing great. They're getting settled. They're in a temporary space right now, and hope to be in their permanent home in September. So it's really a story of folks here in our community, our neighbors, just going to the mat to make it happen because they believed in something that was important and bigger than themselves.
Right, and so in the article, you kind of mentioned too that this nonprofit studio thought that they were going to initially make it through, like their parent company wasn't going to shut them down, but then they eventually found out that they were forcing them to close their doors. And so what did the Live Yes staff tell you about how that closure impacted them?
Yeah, it was really a slow drip because it was, everything was humming along from their point of view. And it was really a situation where they were, I think they would even admit, pretty hands off. They had this national organization that was operating in 13 different states. The parent organization has been around for more than 50 years. So I think, they were under the impression that they were just handling things and didn't really have to worry about that stuff and could focus on the day-to-day stuff and working with, the folks who they serve and everything. And then it was, like I said, a slow drip where in January they find out that the financials aren't great, and they're going to have some layoffs, but it's going to be administrative people, mostly on the East Coast. It's not going to affect the staff here in Lincoln. And then it progressively gets worse. Then they had to put together a business plan to get their own finances in order. And then by the end of February, they were told, it can't go on past June. The money just isn't there. It doesn't work out. And the folks here just because I asked about this, I was like, well, did you take a beat and think like, well, I guess it's over? And to their credit, they never did. They hung up the phone on February 28th and said, okay, what are we going to do? And there was just never a feeling, at least by the leadership here in Lincoln, that it was over. They immediately were thinking of options, and the article doesn't go into it because they did a lot in the weeks after that. I mean, they explored so many different possibilities and options, and because it's a complicated thing. They're technically a service provider for adults with developmental disabilities. So you're talking about licensing through the state, complicated finances involving Medicaid. So it's not an easy you know an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. And they considered, I think, every sort of possible iteration that they could take up. And they ultimately just decided, we're going to become our own local nonprofit, and basically continue doing this work, but do it in the way we want to do it, not have to answer to anyone. So it was obviously
Mhm.
tough for them to learn that they, life as they knew it was ending in some way, but they saw it as an opportunity, which it speaks a lot to the folks there, in particular the two now co-executive directors, Natasha and Micah. They just really, I mean, they never really flinched,
Mhm.
even in the face of some pretty difficult news. I think most of us. I told them that. I was like, if I were in your shoes, I probably would have had to, curl up in a ball or something, at least for a little bit, and kind of regain my composure. But yeah, they just went headfirst into it, and I think it's paid off by the fact that that they never really closed. They're now a Nebraska nonprofit, and they're doing the work that they want to do.
Right. And so we'll touch on that service provider challenge that they had here in a moment. But what was it like seeing this process and I guess kind of interviewing the staff here at Live Yes as they tried to navigate all of these challenges?
Yeah, I gotta say, I've been doing journalism for a few years, and this is just was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. I mean, you hear so many negative stories and hard to stomach stories, but to actually be there and see the artists creating, to see them interacting, to see them, the staff helping them and them teasing the staff and the staff teasing them back. I mean, it was just such an amazing experience to be there in that sort of energy where everyone is just they're comfortable with themselves, they're comfortable in their skin, they're comfortable amongst each other. It's just like uh, you know it's like coming from a high pressure environment into just like uh, you know no gravity. Just it's incredible, the atmosphere they've created and just kind of the bond that everyone shares there. I've never really experienced anything like that before, and it's very apparent. You don't have to spend much time there to see that the artists love being there and the staff genuinely love being there too. So it's definitely been a unique experience for me.
Right. And so nonprofits are really known for having some grit. And Live Yes is also pretty unique because they are centered in the arts with a vocational component for those with developmental disabilities. And so one part of your article discusses the governor's decision to eliminate the developmental disability registry. So, how did that impact them throughout this process?
Yeah, it's just been another thing that they've had to monitor essentially. Um, they're not as heavily impacted by the waitlist issue as others because uh, they have a component where they provide this vocational training. They also provide some of the more supportive services uh, to some individuals, and they have individuals on that wait list wanting more comprehensive services. So it definitely would impact some of the people they serve, uh, and that would possibly prevent them from being able to expand to meet future needs. Um, but it's something that they have to pay attention to and monitor because it's an evolving issue. I mean, the governor is attempting to address something that the state has been unable to solve for decades now, and that is this issue of the wait list for adults seeking comprehensive services. I mean, there was 2,700 people on this wait list uh, as of I think April 1st, and the average wait, according to the state, is 6 to 8 years. So that's 6 to 8 years that people are just waiting. families are waiting to get these services that they need. So it's an issue that does affect Live Yes, that Live Yes cares about and is monitoring. Uh, but it's not going to be as big an issue, I guess, as some of the other service providers who they don't have that arts component, but they focus more on providing services to folks in the developmental disability community. So it's yet another complicating factor in this complicated story. I mean, you know, I give a lot of credit to these folks for being able to stay on top of it and understand it, because you listen to the debate, especially at like the legislature, on some of these issues, and I'm not sure everyone there has their head wrapped around it completely. So it's definitely a complicated issue.
Right. And so Live Yes had quite a few hurdles to jump through in a short period of time. So I guess kind of just talk about that, how they managed to do that while also helping people.
Yeah, they would be the first to credit, you know, this community around them. And one of the people, and actually the way I found out about this story in the first place was a guy quoted in our story, Craig Roper, who's a local artist, and he's kind of become an evangelist for Live Yes. He got familiarized with them about 2 years ago, having never heard of them. Much like myself, when he was telling me about this, I was like, "Wait, Live what now? And where are they? They're here in Lincoln." But yeah, he found out about it, and he just was so captivated with the work they're doing and their story that you know, he kind of dove in head first himself, and he's now on the board, and he's really, I mean, that's how I learned about it, but he's brought it to the attention of a whole bunch of people and brought them into the studio and given them tours and everything. And those were people like Adam Morfeld, former state lawmaker and an attorney who helped Live Yes with some of the paperwork and becoming a nonprofit. Connie Duncan, who's a LPS school board member and help with fundraising. I mean, it's all these connections and people who maybe they weren't familiar with Live Yes, but then they see it and they're instantly like, wow, how can I get involved with this? So it's really been this just group effort. And the two people who I mentioned earlier, Natasha Scholes and Micah Snyder, the co-executive directors, they've just, I mean, you can kind of see it in their face. They haven't, I think, taken a lot of weekends and a lot of time off since February. But you know, those two and the people around them and their staff too. It's not in the article, but I think they pretty much retained every single staff member minus like one or two. So we're talking more than a dozen people who through all this, you know, stuck with it. And I mean, there was definitely a period of time they weren't sure they were going to make payroll, you know, after June 30th. So I mean, if I'm putting myself in their shoes, I like to get paid. I don't know if I'd stick around
Yeah.
if the paycheck was kind of a question mark. And to their credit, I mean, it never was. They've kept up on payroll. But yeah, it's just been this huge effort by a bunch of different people to keep this thing going. And you know, as you pointed out, they never really shut down so that they could, you know, figure all this out. They've been continuing to serve the artists and everyone who come to the studio, all while kind of, you know, essentially putting the plane together while still flying it. So it's been an impressive story to kind of report and to hear.
I was going to say, it's definitely an inspiring story just to hear about how committed these people are to continue this nonprofit and to continue helping people with developmental disabilities that probably have been calling this place home, you know, for several years or since they started, which was over a decade ago.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just one of the unique aspects that was pointed out to me is, you know, some of these folks they don't get a lot of say in much of their life. I mean, uh, a lot of times they have care providers or family members, and it's there's not always a lot of autonomy or decision making power on their part. And to watch them at Live Yes, I mean, they're not being, you know, told what to do or given assignments or anything. I mean, they decide what they want to do. They decide what they want to make. They decide when they want to make it. I mean, you know, there was an anecdote relayed to me where someone had just come in and they were going to do some drawing, and they wanted to be told what color to draw the picture, and they had to explain, like, well, no, you can choose, like, it's your drawing. And there was kind of this moment in this process of having to learn, like, oh wow, I do have the ability and the power to make this decision myself, which, I mean, that alone was a pretty powerful story to hear. So uh, and it's a lot of dedication on these people's part. I mean, you can see that just spending a little bit of time there, because they're certainly not getting rich doing this work. So it's a testament to how much they care and how much it means to them. And a lot of the people who work there have some sort of connection. Maybe it's a family member or someone who has developmental disabilities, but I mean, they they wear their care on the sleeve. It's very easy to see, and it is a feel good story, and it's kind of inspiring to witness.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up here, where is Live Yes Studios located and what's next on their list? Do they have any big fundraisers that they're planning for, or finishing touches, or maybe just taking a breath after these past couple months?
I think it's a little bit of all the above. They're trying to catch their breath. They're continuing to fundraise, and I think that information is available on their website. Um, they're in a temporary space around 11th and M Streets. Uh, they'll be moving into a permanent place in that same building, hopefully within the next month, is the timeline they've been given. Um, and from there, they're going to plan a kind of a grand opening celebration early next year. They could resume some gallery showings and stuff like that before then, but I think they're still trying to. They're waiting to get into their permanent home before they officially put anything out there on the calendar. So, but in talking with them earlier this week, uh, they seem to be in a good place, and they feel a little bit of stability for the first time in a while. So, yeah, they seem to be in a good place.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing the Live Yes Studios story with us, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and for sharing the story.
All right. So Hoffman's article, A Lincoln Studio Helps Artists with Developmental Disabilities Find Their Voice, It Was Almost Shuttered, is available on 1011now.com or flatwaterfreepress.org. For more news and updates, visit our website and follow us on all our social platforms. From our newsroom to wherever you are. See you on the next stream.